So we go to Death Row East.
Whoa, come on.
Whoa. Let's talk about it. Go to Death Row East. So Death Row East. So we got to take it back to the conversation after we listen to it. No. This is pre-album. Pre-album. Pre-album.
This is when y'all got the track list.
The pre-album talk. So we had a conversation. I wish we would have recorded it. But we had a talk before the album came out, and we tried to guess what this album, which each song was going. Like, I think that when he dropped the track list, he dropped the track list. Then we got on the phone, was like, "Hey, what do you think each song is gonna be?" Death Row East was one of them songs we went in.
These niggas grabbed pencils and pens, started doing fucking anagrams.
That's what you do when you know the history.
Yeah.
These niggas was out here doing Sudoku with letters.
Sudoku. So I think, what did I say? Because this, again, I was making the same claim that this is giving me It Was Written vibes, just on the strength and me understanding you doing certain things at certain times to pull from that energy. So I'm like, okay, looking at this track list is giving me It Was Written vibes. Then we had went more in depth. So this is how the MEME podcast, this is how in depth you too, goddamn LL Cool Fee. You have these discussions too, because we have the MEME conspiracy theories to show you how far we go with our thought process and, analyzing certain things and coming up with these great, wonderful ideas. So we looking at Death Row East. I know the history.
Don't forget that you are king of the reach, though.
You say what?
King of the reach, nigga. You will reach. You be reaching.
Shout out to Diggable Planets.
Hey, it don't matter how long the reach is, as long as the dot connects.
Yes.
You can reach for the stars as long as you touch one. You touched it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Nas said. He's stepping on the stars.
Yes. So Death Row East. So I know the history of Death Row East. So I'm like, okay, shit, he gonna bring up the that night in Bryant Park. Number one. Number two, Christ over here brings up I think we start talking about song placement.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you understand, It Was Written, song number 2 was The Message on It Was Written, which took shots at Pac. Now Nas denies it and said I wasn't talking about Pac. He was talking about Pac. So, because if you understand the story, Death Row East, whatnot, they will respectfully take the diss songs off of each other's albums. No, because It Was Written as already had came out when they talked at Bryant Park.
Yeah.
But the Machiavelli album, Tupac was to take off Against All Odds on the album and any diss records, whatever. So before we get into that history, so I'm like, okay, looking at album placement, Death Row East. So I think you brought up this might be an Ether 2. And then I looked at the letters.
Oh.
You said something like Ether. It's like this might be an Ether Part 2. Just looking at the energy, It Was Written, Beef, Death Row East. So we looking at the. He says this might be Ether Part 2. I'm looking at the goddamn letters on Death Row East and started. And this is when what Fee is talking about with Sudoku. I went and grabbed a marker and some paper and wrote out Death Row East, and then wrote out Ether 2, and then start crossing letters out, and it was like Ether 2. And then the only, sad was the
SAAD. Talk about Ether 2. Sad.
So we was like, damn. Well, it went to a whole different other level, but so because I was like, what is Drake's son name? Is his name Assad? Because I was like, SAAD is left, so you got a SAAD. So I'm like, whose name correlates to that? So I'm like, is Drake's son Assad? Damn, you about to diss Drake? Because you also got to put yourself in the mindset. Nas, this is you on like subliminal, like esoteric science shit. So you got to break shit down. He's not just gonna come out and just surface level a goofy ass diss. You're going to have to like really look at and really know what you're looking at to break something down. So that's why we got into that bag. And I was like, damn, Nas is the type of person that would hide the the meaning or the actual title of the song in other letters and shit just to throw you off and shit.
Now, may I add on to this theory that this was a diss song to someone?
Okay, go ahead.
So if we know the history of Pac being Pac coming to New York and, as they say, not being touched. With this being Ether Part 2, and when you change the words around, could be a diss to Jay because, like, hey, even I stepped to Pac when all shit was real. Where were you at? Right. Because, like I said, Pac called out Jay.
Fuck Jay-Z.
So he already had. So he knew who Jay was. So why wasn't Jay stepping to Pac in the park? Why wasn't? Well, Mobb Deep was.
No, they was getting shitted on too.
Yeah, they didn't step to him. They just dropped the diss song.
Right.
But like nobody actually stepped to him except for Nas and Jungle. And Jungle won a war. Shout out to Jungle. Be about that action.
So the history. So yeah, that's how deep we went in with that song and breaking the letters down and all that. Like, damn, he about to diss somebody. So I'm like, okay. And then also the history. So get into the history. So the Death Row East.
That nigga was scared of Suge. So he must be talking about somebody that was around who didn't say nothing.
So yeah, so understanding the height of the East Coast, West Coast beef, Bad Boy versus Death Row, Puff versus Suge, Big versus Pac, and then you had other figures in New York, Haitian Jack, Tut. You had goddamn Jimmy Henchman, key players in New York. That if you understand the Quad studio shooting, Pac going to jail, getting set up for the rape charge, all of that. We talk about that in season 1. We did the 4-part series with the Tupac. We actually spent the whole episode talking about the Quad studio shooting and everything that revolved around that. So if you understand that, and then, this whole situation, the MTV Music Awards in New York, Pac. Now, if you watch the movie All Eyes on Me, they make it seem like Suge gave Pac Death Row East because also understanding the story, Pac was, wanting to leave Death Row. Pac was also asking about his money, like, hey, I'm not seeing no bread, da-da-da-da. And then, he'll get a house or he'll get some new cars, like, hey, here's some new cars, da-da-da-da. So in the movie, they show you, like, Pac went to Suge to go talk about his money. And then he's like, hey, come here to the back. And then, they got the Death Row East signs. And this is in the movie. So it's like, hey, we want you to start up and head Death Row East. Yada, yada, yada. So in the movie, it's portrayed that way. Now, Death Row was a major influence and pretty much was running shit in the early 90s for the most part. Them expanding to the East Coast where Bad Boy is at, and you have, other East Coast artists over there. That was a major, what's the word I'm looking for?
Infiltration.
At the same time, it was a major
boss move.
There you go. Major boss move, whatnot, because you didn't hear nothing from where you heard the Who Shot You verse, which they was like, hey, that wasn't for Pac. And this is why Pac was in jail. But then you coming over, your whole staff coming over to, in the height of the East Coast, West Coast beef, you come to New York with the Death Row East signs, like, hey, we about money, da-da-da-da. The guy from MTV was like, hey, talk to us about Death Row East. And Pac was like, do you believe in God? He was like, yeah, then believe in Death Row East. so then he goes and like, hey, this is about money, boom, 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 boom. So he breaks that down. So point I'm making, the movie, it makes it seems like Pac is heading Death Row East. So in actuality, it was Eric B who was heading Death Row East. So Eric B is president. Call back. Eric B for president. He did become president of Death Row East. So he is a major factor in bringing Nas and Pac together. So the infamous meetup in Bryant Park with Nas and his crew, Jungle and all of them, Bravehearts and all the Queens and Brooklyn niggas, with Pac, Death Row, Outlaws, and a bunch of New Jersey niggas. Jersey niggas. It was like Eric B was the one that brought them together, because if you understand Nas's history, Nas was in the studio with Eric B and Rakim, and he would record demo songs during Eric B and Rakim sessions. When they would pretty much break, he'll go in and do some songs. So he was brought up under Eric B and Rakim. So he was the little brother for the most part. So Eric B has his connections on the West Coast with Suge in the Death Row camp. So he was the liaison or the mediator. So he's the one that brought them together. And he's the one that was head of Death Row East. So you can go listen to the interviews that he's done, Eric B, with Queens Flip. And this is coming from Eric B's, it's coming from his mouth. So he's the one that's saying all this stuff. So needless to say, they talked. They pulled, of course, they people was ready to go at it, but Pac and Nas pulled each other they went to the side, talked. Pac was like, hey, we shouldn't be, beefing. We shouldn't be. But before, per Eric B, he's saying, hey, Pac was ready to box Nas. He was ready to put hands on Nas. Eric was like, hey, Nas doesn't want no beef. He's already said he don't want no problems with you. But at the same time, Nas is not one of these niggas. He's built for it. He's not one of these niggas. If you back Nas in the corner, he will come back at you, and it's not going to be a good look for the most part. So they pretty much squashed everything. Like, hey, and Eric B says on the way back to LA, Pac was like, hey man, Nas is a cool brother. I want to do music with Nas. We need to fly Nas. When we come back from the Tyson fight, we're gonna fly Nas out and we're gonna do an album together.
I just thought about something.
What is that?
If Nas and Pac would have made Pac didn't die, and they came, and let's say he flew Nas out to LA. Imagine them doing a remix, since they did the same beat on Street Dreams and All Eyes on Me, where they came out with a song together with the same beat. What would that sound like?
That would have been good for the culture. It would have been phenomenal. I think it would have been classics that came out of that, because Tupac respected Nas. Me and my girlfriend, I gave you power.
I gave you power.
Pac even says like, hey, that's where I got me and my girlfriend from, listening to I Gave You Power.
Yeah.
So there was respect there on both ends. Now, taking it a step further, Nas is Biggie's man. Well, they were cool. I'm not saying that they were like, Nas is cool with Big. Bad Boy, he's cool with Puff. If Nas goes over there and does that, what does that do for Nas in regards to him coming home to New York around Big and Puff and Jay? Because Jay is actually Big's right-hand man at the time before he gets killed. So if Nas goes over to Death Row and start fucking with Pac, them two connecting, then you have a Biggie and Jay versus Nas and Pac.
That would have been amazing. Now, I would add this to what you're saying. So as you said, how would it looked when Nas went back to New York?
Right.
If Pac would have lived, Death Row East would have got off the ground. Even Nas said Suge was about to turn half of New York red. So they might not have liked it, but they weren't gonna do nothing about it. Because then I think if that would have happened, Nas would have been the top dog in the East Coast. Clearly, no debating. He would have overtook Biggie, and then that fight would have been even more prevalent. So the Nas and Biggie fight would happen before the Nas and Jay fight. So I think I would say it'd be more of a Pac and so it'd be like Pac and Nas versus Big and Big's little man Jay.
Right. Now, would that have fueled a fire in Jay-Z to take him on a whole different trajectory?
It turned into a battle rapper.
Because Jay doesn't like to be second to nobody. So even though he was already trying to outshine Big on Brooklyn's Finest, him playing second to Biggie in the beef with Pac and Nas, Jay would have to battle Big to be like, hey, I'm better than Big, and I can go against Nas and Pac. So would that have fueled a fire in Jay-Z to take him to levels we've never seen, just given the position that he was in and knowing the type of dude he is?
Well, nigga, you should have showed up at the park.